Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Anecdotal Economist. And I think that might be my intro, just simply saying who I am. Well, you probably already knew when you clicked this video, but today I want to talk about the Federal Reserve. Specifically, I got the chance to listen to one of the 12 banks of the Federal Reserve this week. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to download what they said. In fact, I was quite impressed and surprised by a lot of things they had to share. And to tell you the truth, I shouldn't be. I suspect most of the people that get hired there are some of the top individuals in their fields in economics in terms of grade point average or however you get hired there. I'm sure it's not the bottom of the barrel. Those are very highly sought after jobs. I think at the end of the day, my problem with the Federal Reserve just comes down to incentives. Charlie Munger always says, show me the incentive and I will show you the outcome. And I just think the incentives of the people working there are maybe slightly different than my own. And so I do have some disagreements, but I thought I would share some of the finer, more interesting points. I took some notes, and so I'll show off some coins as per usual. Somebody tell me when this coin is from. Somebody date it. So the number one thing that I took away, or I guess the first thing, maybe not the number one thing, is simply that credit card delinquencies are currently going up approximately the same rate as they were during COVID. Now that's very interesting to me to find out that the credit card delinquencies are going up that quickly. That's very interesting. But more interesting to me is that they're going up across all income levels. In other words, people of all income levels, including the rich people and the middle class, are racking up their credit cards and going through delinquencies at the same rate as poor people. Now, to quote one of my favorite presidents, well, maybe I won't do that. That might be inappropriate, but you all know the quote I was thinking of. But yeah, I think that that's interesting because when you think of people who are poor, you can kind of see why they would do it, right? It's like, well, whatever. I'm not gonna be able to pay my bills anyways. Use the credit card till it doesn't work anymore, and then figure it out from there. You know, I get that attitude, but when you're middle class or especially upper class, what's your excuse, right? Well, I guess you must be. I think you must be trying to keep up with the Joneses, right? You've got your Lamborghini or your nice house. You don't want to look like you can't afford things anymore. So you just throw it on the credit card. You give into peer pressure. And that is a perfect example of why you should own gold and silver, right? Because when you need to sell this stuff, well, hopefully the Joneses don't even know about it. I really hope you're not selling your gold and silver to keep up with the Joneses, but I think you get my point. I found that to be very strange that wealthy people would be racking up credit card delinquencies. It's a sign of the times, man. A sign of the times. Our public education has absolutely failed us, and I don't blame public education because I think it's up to individual families to teach their children about financial literacy, but certainly the public education has not helped, and I have no other explanation for that. The fact that somebody could be intelligent enough to make six figures or seven figures and still have problems with credit card debt, I need to get in the credit card business. That's what it tells me. Let's continue on. The next point that I had many, but I'm not going to share them all, but the next point that I had was that they actually like to use anecdotal evidence as part of their analysis. And I thought that was interesting because a lot of people attack me and say, well, anecdotal economist, that's stupid, anecdotes have no value. I heard it once said that the summation of anecdotes is data. And at the end of the day, you have to realize that data is not perfect, right? The data always gets you hear about studies and all these different graphs that people show. You gotta remember when they're curating that data, it is imperfect. And so I do believe anecdotes have a part to play. It's part of the reason why I called this channel The Anecdotal Economist. The other part is because it was sort of a play on words, basically saying I don't know what I'm talking about. But my point is, I thought it was interesting. They actually, do reach out to key people, ask them what their opinions are, and it's just pure anecdotes. I don't know if they incorporate that into their hard data, but the fact that they're observing the anecdotes at all is very interesting to me. And so I thought that was something noteworthy. Another thing that was very noteworthy from their presentation was simply the fact that they confirmed that they are going to be revising approximately, give or take, 800,000 jobs off the job market from last year. Now, I've heard that rumored a few times now, but to hear them say it again, it was just a reminder that, man, you just, how can you trust that data? That's almost 1 million jobs, and at the end of the day, the data is basically useless. It gets revised. It's only useful in hindsight, and even then, You know, how do you apply that? There's all kinds of questions there. Hopefully this sparks some conversations in the comments, because I found it very interesting. I was, they're not hiding the fact that this is the case. It's not like they're, sitting there twirling their mustaches, they're evil, and they're, hiding it. They're just saying straight up, like, yeah, it's because of the way we calculate the data, which may or may not lend itself to being highly inaccurate, right when you might want it to not be. That's just, anyways, neither here nor there. Maybe that didn't make any sense, but it is what it is. I was kind of surprised by it. Now, there was a bunch of other notes, but the final thing that I thought was interesting is they said they don't use CPI when they're calculating inflation. I shouldn't say they don't use it, but they primarily use the PCE index, which is lagging, comes out a little bit later, and it's basically not any different than CPI. It's basically shifted off, but it's more or less the same thing. So it kind of makes you wonder why. Ultimately, it just means that they're using slower data that takes longer to come in. They would have to explain. I'm sure if you Googled it, you could find out why they do that. But it is something they do that I did not know. I thought they used CPI. And in hindsight, I think I probably had heard that at one point, just forgot. But it's interesting, right? They have all these different methods, all these calculations, and what does it amount to? Well, at the end of the day, I would say I am not a huge fan of the Federal Reserve with all of their calculations, all their data, all the things they do, because I believe they cause shifts in the economy and distortions that I would not like to see, that would not exist in a free market money system. But having said that, we don't live in an ideal world, and to the extent that they've been charged to do what they're doing, I think they do a good job of it. My question is more fundamental than that, right? What are their incentives, and do we actually want them doing that? But that's not their job, right? That's the job of the electorate. And the electorate probably isn't going to change it. I don't think most people have a clue what the Federal Reserve even is, or what Federal Reserve notes are. So all in all, that's kind of my wrap-up of the meeting. It was a lot of fun. I gained an appreciation for what those people do. Sometimes it's good just to meet people in person and kind of realize, like, okay, these are real people, not just shadow figures in the dark. Although it can seem that way sometimes. I'm sure some people will correct me on that in the comments. There's a lot to unpack when you're talking about the Federal Reserve, but all this was me simply saying that I heard a few tidbits and I thought I would share them with you. Maybe they're not useful for gold and silver when you're talking about bullion, but I think generally it is good to know what your government's trying to do. So with that, let's get into our coin review here. I've already placed this one out. I've got a generic round from Silvertown Mint. This is a Liberty round. I don't know if that's what they call it. That's what I'm calling it because it looks like a silver eagle. And I actually said in the last video, if you watch it, that I'm not a fan of these rounds, but I thought it was appropriate because it kind of reminded me of the silver eagle. We're talking about the Federal Reserve, so this is the coin I grabbed. And it, it's cool. It makes its attempt. It's got, she's holding the branches there and the flame and stepping out onto the thing. I think this has got to be like, the Statue of Liberty in motion almost. What it kind of looks like. I love the way the stars are on. It's a nice coin. Nothing wrong with it, but it just feels like it's trying to be an eagle, and it simply is not as nice as an eagle. If you put an eagle side by side with this, it's just not going to hold a candle. That's just my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of this round. I do like the eagle side. The eagle looks really cool. And so that is the way I'm going to face it when I put it back down. This could honestly give a eagle a run for its money if it was a little bit of a better quality finish, but it's kind of a rough finish. It's just a cheap, generic round. So nothing wrong with this, but if I was to rate it against a buffalo, I would say I'd prefer a buffalo. And that is kind of my gold standard, as it were, for generic rounds. Do I like it better than a buffalo or not? And if I don't, I'm generally just going to buy a buffalo. Now, to put that in contrast, the coin I showed yesterday, I like more than a buffalo. I think it's a really cool coin, and so I'll pick up a few more of those. But that's just generally how I review generic rounds. At the end of the day, they're all pretty much worth the same thing, and they're generally all priced about the same too. So you pick what you like. But guys, that's going to be my video for today. I hope you enjoyed me just spitballing some of the things I picked up from the Federal Reserve. I thought it was interesting. And with that, there's one more thing I'm going to do as I'm closing out the video, switching out this book for something a little better. We had to balance it out here with Free to Choose by Milton Friedman, get a little bit of more Chicago School of Economics going on in the background. And so, yeah, if you want to support the channel, I just got to say I'm so pleased. I've got over 2,200 subscribers now, which is kind of jaw-dropping how quickly that jumped up. So I really appreciate all the people subbing. And so if you want to, continue to support the channel and leave me a comment, but you don't know what to say, today's word has got to be reserve. Or if that's too hard to spell, you could use federal, or just throw a comment and say whatever you want. I always appreciate them. I generally reply to most of them. And so with that has been my 2 ounces worth. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, I'm pulling for you, and we're all in this together.
Kilogram, you're the dragon, you're the rabbit.
Okay, let's look at the money side now. Watch as I pull this bad boy out of here. Absolutely stunning once you get it out of the case. Feeling the weight of this in my hand. Oh, that's such a good feeling.
I never had enough gold.